Have you ever wanted to make a character that is a thrown weapon fighter? Well, in today's build, that is exactly what I'm going to do. So, welcome to D&D build number 22, a build I'm entitling the Lumberjack. My name is Nathan, and I make these videos about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, typically once every week now that I'm getting back to a more regular schedule, uploading them on Saturdays or Sundays, depending on my changing dynamic schedule, and it is pretty busy at this point during the summer. But this is a build that I'm making more around this idea of throwing weapons, particularly handaxes. And I'm kind of building around a concept, and this is a bit of an homage to my grandfather who passed away recently. So instead of like some builds I've done in the past, on this build in particular, I'm taking a concept of being just kind of a lumberjack and having axes, and kind of seeing where I can go with that and how I can optimize it. And so this build is the result. So here is our agenda for this video. I'm going to kind of introduce and talk about the build concept. Then I'll talk about this character build from level 1 to level 17. And at each of our key thresholds, so level 6, level 9, level 13, level 17, I'm going to give a damage report and kind of talk about the tactics and things that this character can do as a whole. And then we'll summarize and kind of talk about the build as a whole. So first, intro and build concept. What is this build going to feature? Well, first, this is going to be a well-rounded offensive ranged character utilizing dual-wielded thrown weapons. And I'm going to grade this character in my DPR, or damage per round category. In the description of this video, as with all of my builds, there is going to be a link to a spreadsheet where I have all of the damage numbers on all of my builds. So if you want to see any of the builds I'm talking about or comparing to, use the filter in the build type column to select DPR and control. I usually do DPR setups on my control build, so that's why I usually include those. This character is also going to be capable of some burst damage because we are going to have some fighter levels. But that said, in the long run plan of this character, I'm going to use those to set up damage per round. But if you need to do burst damage with this character, that is something they are going to be able to do. Another thing this character is going to have is they're going to be a strong woodsman and support for the whole party in the exploration and infiltration pillar of the game. But they're also going to have really good social abilities, and that's going to make this character useful in all aspects of play. Another interesting thing about this character is we're going to transition from being mostly a martial in low tiers of play into a summoner type character and a caster at higher tiers of play. And again, this build is somewhat inspired by my grandfather Pat, who passed away relatively recently. He was in forestry, and he climbed trees and stuff, and he was even a professor of forestry at a local college. So this build has been a bit in honor of him and just kind of making this lumberjack axe type guy. So this is a 4-book build. The books that you will need for this build are the Player's Handbook, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and I'm using a race from Monsters of the Multiverse. Now, it is important to note, I am going to be releasing this video on August 3rd, which means we are just under a couple months away from the release of the 2024 Player's Handbook. This build uses the 2014 version of the rules, and I have gotten to see some of the new rules, but as a smaller content creator, I don't have a pre-access to the book or anything. So that said, this build will work, as far as I know, for the 2024 rules with some changes. Some of the mechanics are going to be the same, but when it comes time to when we actually have those new books, if people are interested, I can go back through and update these builds, or at least produce some kind of document that will show you how to transition. But for now, this build uses the 2014 version of the rules. All right, so at level 1, what is our starting class? And we're going to be getting this one as a fighter. This is not going to be a mostly fighter character, but I have my reasons for starting fighter here at level 1. So as a first level fighter, we get proficiency in all armor and shields, as well as simple and martial weapons, as well as strength and constitution saving throws. Now, one of the reasons why I want to start fighter is this character is going to be concentrating on a spell, and our main class, which is actually going to be ranger, doesn't get proficiency in constitution saves, so it'll be a lot easier for a ranger who's a ranger at first level to lose their concentration. Also, this build is dependent on having multiple fighting styles, and so getting one from fighter as well as the saving throw proficiency just makes a lot of sense. Now, specifically, the fighting style I'm going to take on this build is 2-weapon fighting. What this does is if we are engaged in 2-weapon fighting, we can add our ability modifier to the damage roll of our offhand attack. Now, this isn't actually as good compared to some other particular fighting styles, but on this build, we're actually going to be able to make pretty good use out of it. We also get second wind here, so as a bonus action, once per rest, short or long, we can roll a d10 and recover number of hit points equal the dice we rolled plus our fighter level. Now, for our race today, I'm going to be using the Eladrin out of Monsters of the Multiverse. Now, there is a specific reason for this that I will get to, but what does this race get? Well, we are a humanoid, an elf. We're a medium-sized creature with a speed of 30 feet. We have dark vision out to a range of 60 feet, pretty standard. We have a Fey ancestry feature, so we have advantage on saving throws against the charmed condition. And then we have this ability called Fey Step, which we can use a number of times per long rest equal to our proficiency bonus that will improve at level 3. We will get to pick an aspect of the seasons, and we can potentially change this every time we take a long rest. We also get to pick an attribute to base our DC off of. I'm going to pick Wisdom on this character. And the main season that we're going to be aligned with from level 3 plus is going to be Winter, and I'll talk about that more when we get to level 3. We also get keen senses, so we have racial proficiency in perception, and then we get the Monsters of the Multiverse version of the elf trance, so we get 2 skill or weapon proficiencies that we can swap out on a long rest, and we're aware, and it only takes 4 hours and that kind of thing. Normal elf stuff. Now, in terms of our stats, we're doing the point buy method as always. I'm going to take a 15 in strength and put our +2 there. Yes, this is going to be a strength primary ranger build. I'm going to get a 13 in dexterity. We need this to multiclass into ranger. This is also going to be a heavy armor wearing character, by the way. I'm going to get 12 in constitution, and I know that's rather low, but this character is going to have mostly d10 hit dice, so our hit points are not going to be that much of an issue. And then an 8 intelligence, a 15 wisdom with our ratio +1, and then 8 charisma. Now, this gives us a starting hit points of 11, so 10 from being a fighter +1 from our constitution. And I should say, for other race options, I thought the Furbolg might be particularly thematic with just kind of something like my grandfather. But honestly, you can pick whatever you want and pick your favorite race. This is not a heavily feat-dependent build, nor is it doesn't particularly rely on any racial abilities. That said, if you have a race that has an ability to cause the fear condition, particularly if you can base your DC off of wisdom, that will work very well, or one that has a connection to nature in the woods would be quite thematic. Now, the reason for the Eladrin in particular is the winter version of Fey Step has a chance to cause the fear condition when you use it, which will work well with our ranger subclass later on. All right, for our starting equipment, we want to take the items offered by our class. So I'm going to take chainmail for heavy armor. I'm going to get a battle axe and a shield. So we have a big axe, and then I'm going to get 2 hand axes. And then if you have any leftover gold, buy a bunch of hand axes. You're going to need a lot of them. This character is going to be chucking those things like mad. All right, so in terms of kind of RP, I imagine for this character, we are connected to and interested in the forest. We love axes of all kinds. We might be cut down trees as necessary, but we don't want to do it any more than isn't sustainable. We also have a bit of a connection to the Feywild, and that might be pretty normal given that we're an elf and an Eladrin in particular. This character loves to tell stories and tales and loves to go on adventures, and I would most likely take the Outlander background on this character. All right. So at level 2, we are going to multiclass immediately into Ranger. Ranger is going to be our main class, and we just took that dip at first level again for the heavy armor, for the constitution saving throws, and the extra fighting style. So as a first level Ranger, we get proficiency in a Ranger skill. I'm going to use the Tasha's feature on this character because they are way better than the Player's Handbook versions of all of those features, at least for the 2014 Player's Handbook. So we get favored foe, so once per turn, we can add a d4 to our damage rolls against our favorite target, and this uses concentration, and we can use a number of times per long rest equal to our proficiency bonus. And then we get the canny benefit of Deft Explorer, again out of Tasha's, and we get expertise in a skill of our choice and learn a couple more languages. At level 3, we are going to be a second level Ranger, and we get our second fighting style. I'm going to take thrown weapon fighting. What this does is whenever we damage a creature with a thrown weapon attack, we can add +2 to the damage roll, and we can also draw a thrown weapon as part of the attack that we make with it. So this solves our object interactions. And so the basic way that this character is going to work, when you start your turn, you're going to hold one axe in your offhand. Your main hand is going to be empty. Then you're going to chuck 2 handaxes with your main hand once you have extra attack. Because we attacked with a light weapon in one hand, the hand axe, we therefore are qualified to make a bonus action attack with our offhand, and we can chuck that axe. Then we can use our free object interaction to redraw the axe in the offhand, and that way we qualify for two weapon fighting and everything. And overall, it's a pretty interesting way, and mechanically the hand juggling actually works. So we can dual wield thrown weapons and just chuck them like mad. Now, we also get Ranger spellcasting here. And since we're a level 3 character, we get the Eladrin seasonal teleport effects, and I want to focus on being a winter Eladrin. So what this does in particular, so when we use our Fey step, our 30-step bonus action teleport, one creature of our choice that we can see within 5 feet of us before we teleported must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be frightened of us until the end of our next turn. Now, the fear effect is not universally applicable, but that said, this will synergize with our later Ranger features that we're going to get, and will give us an option. We also, as for our spells, we get 2 first level slots here. We get to know 2 spells. I'm going to take Hunter's Mark. I'm actually going to use this a lot on this character, and then I'll take Zephyr Strike for some additional utility and advantage. And while you concentrate on Zephyr Strike, you don't provoke opportunity attacks. And that's something I think is actually really good for a ranged character, as again, this character is primarily going to want to throw axes. Level 4, we are a 3rd level Ranger, which means we get our Ranger archetype, our subclass, and I'm going to go with Fey Wanderer. What this does, we get the Dreadful Strikes feature, so this lets us add a d4 of psychic damage to our attacks once per turn. We get Fey Wanderer Magic. This is our subclass specific spells, and the one that we get at this level is Charm Person. We also get Otherworldly Glamour. Now, this is a really interesting feature. What this does is when we make charisma checks, and this includes all skills and that kind of thing, we can add our wisdom modifier to those checks. And then in addition, we get perception. We get proficiency in deception, performance, or persuasion. So even though this character has a negative charisma modifier, it's going to end up being a positive bonus because we have this Otherworldly Glamour feat and a decent feature and a decent wisdom. So if you took proficiency and even expertise in some of those social skills, this character can actually function as a reasonable face for the party, and this is going to make this character competent at all pillars of play. So social, exploration, and this character is going to be reasonably good at combat. We also get Primal Awareness as a Tasha's Ranger here, so we know the Speak with Animals spell. We always have it prepared, doesn't count against our number of prepared spells, and we can cast it once per long rest without spending a spell slot. We also get to learn another Ranger spell here, and we bump up to 3 first-level spell slots, and I would learn Entangle. It's a great control spell at this level, even though it takes concentration. At level 5, we are a 4th level Ranger, which means we get our first ability score increase or feat, and I'm going to take this Slasher feat. This is out of Tasha's. We can bump our dexterity or strength. We're obviously going to be bumping our strength. And what this does is once per turn, when we deal slashing damage to a creature, and hand axes deal slashing damage, we can reduce their speed by 10 feet until the start of our next turn. And then if we get a crit, that creature gets disadvantage on all of their attack rolls, again, until the start of our next turn. And what we can do with this is we can use this with our hand axe chucking. We can currently throw 2 hand axes per turn. What this will do is this will help us maintain distance, and once we drop control spells like Entangle that create difficult terrain, this will help lock our targets inside and keep them from closing with us. And maintaining distance and spacing is the main way that this character is going to control enemies to kind of set them up for your allies and keep everyone safe. And this feat's a great way to do that. At level 6, we are going to be a 5th level Ranger. That means extra attack. We get Misty Step from our Fey Wanderer spells, and we get the Beast Sense spell from Primal Awareness. And we are now a 3rd level caster, so that's 4 first level spell slots, 2 second level spell slots, and we get to learn another spell. I would learn Pass Without Trace. This basically covers the entire party for stealth. You probably know what this is at this point, but if you don't, it gives everybody within, I think, 30 feet of you a plus 10 bonus to stealth checks for an hour. Incredible spell. I would also highly consider retraining Entangle to Spike Growth here. It doesn't restrain people like Entangle does, but there is no save. Also creates difficult terrain and damages enemies if they move, and you can lock them inside it with Slasher and throwing your axes. Overall, great spell. I really love this spell, even if you're not leveraging it with force movement for damage. All right, at level 6, it is time for our first damage report. So what do our tactics look like at this point? Well, in the first round, we're going to cast Hunter's Mark, and we're going to throw a couple of hand axes and apply our Dreadful Strikes on the first attack that hits. And then in round 2 and beyond, we're going to attack our target 3 times, twice from our action and once from our bonus action. And again, this works because we can throw our hand axes. We can draw our hand axes as part of the attack to throw them. So we throw the main hand, we draw and throw another axe with the main hand, and then because we attacked with the main hand, we can then chuck the axe from the offhand, and then use our object interaction to draw another offhand axe and repeat as long as we have axes. Again, I would hope you probably are going to want like 12 to 15 hand axes on this character, and you're going to want to run around and pick them up and that kind of thing. All right, so in terms of our damage numbers, and I should also mention we can do area control with Entangle and Spike Growth, depending on which one you kept. Slasher works great here as well, and we have Zephyr Strike to kite or disengage if someone actually gets into melee with us. We can just, slap them with our 2 axes, but that said, throwing our axes actually does more damage because we have the fighting style. So at this point, we have 3 hand axes. Each of these has a +7 to hit, so +4 from strength, +3 from our proficiency, doing 2d6 +6 slashing damage. One of those d6s is from Hunter's Mark, and the +4 is our strength, and then +2 is from the thrown weapon fighting style. And then our Dreadful Strikes gives us an extra d4 of psychic damage on the first attack that hits. And I should mention, if our target dies, we should probably want to transfer Hunter's Mark if we think we have a target that's going to survive a reasonable amount of time. Our basic attacks do about 9.5 damage without Hunter's Mark. That's going to be 13 with. So unless you're going to potentially attack a target 3 times, at least Hunter's Mark is not worth it to use. So whether or not you transfer it depends on how healthy your target is. All right, but against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we would do 38.6 damage per round. Against an enemy with an armor class of 15 and +5 to their saves, it would be 28.2 damage per round. Now, compared to other damage per round builds I've made to date, this honestly isn't that bad. We are toward the high end of martial builds that don't use Great Weapon Master or Sharpshooter. We are definitely behind my 2 baseline fighter builds that use those at this point. We are ahead of some of the weaker control spellcasters, and we are definitely behind the Giant Scoundrel Barbarian rogue build at this point. But that said, we are ranged, we have control, and this is actually pretty darn decent damage, and I would be very happy with this at this point. All right, at level 7, we are going to be a 6th level Ranger, and we are going to be continuing in Ranger for some time. So the damage of our Favored Foe bumps up to a d6. Honestly, I probably wouldn't be using it here over Hunter's Mark because Favored Foe only works once per turn, and Hunter's Mark can work on every single attack, although Favored Foe doesn't require any action economy to use. We also get our next Deft Explorer benefit, which is called Roving. This increases our speed by 5 feet, and we gain a climbing and swimming speed equal to our walking speed, and that's all we get. All right, at level 8, we are a Ranger 7, and we get our next Fey Wanderer subclass feature, and this feature is called Beguiling Twist. So what this does is it gives us advantage on saves against the Charmed and the Frightened condition. Now, we already had advantage against Charmed because of our race, but Frightened helps. Then we have this kind of ability where we can redirect Charm or Fear effects. So specifically, what this does, whenever we or a creature that we can see within 120 feet of us succeeds on a save against being Charmed or Frightened, we can use our reaction to force a different creature that we can see within the same range to make a wisdom save against our spell save DC. And if they fail, they are charmed or frightened of us, our choice, for 1 minute, and they can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of their turns, ending the effect on a success. So because we have that ability to potentially cause fear with our racial teleport, we can use it with this if the target passes to try to give someone else fear or charmed. You can also use, I believe, the Autumn Eladrin, which does charm. So anything that does fear or charm, you can use with this to fear or charm anybody else. And so that's a pretty cool thing. We also get another second level spell at this point, as well as another second level slot. And I would probably honestly take Enhance Ability on this character with the RP that I'm thinking. If we're going to be the social leader of our party, giving ourselves advantage on charisma checks would be fantastic and would be a great way to enhance our ability as a party face. At level 9, we are a 8th level ranger. This means another ability score increase or feat. So I'm going to bump our strength to 20 and cap it. And then we also get land stride, so we can move through difficult terrain on the ground, and we ignore plants and like spikes and thorns and that kind of thing. Good flavor feature, and can actually be really strong in the right campaign if your DM uses a lot of difficult terrain. I know I play in a game where one of my DMs does, and my ranger gets to ignore it, and it's great. All right. But at level 9, it is time for our next damage report. So what has changed since last time? Well, in the last 3 levels, we have capped our strength at 20, and that's just about it that we've done for our offense. That said, we have gotten a lot more utility and potential control from our class features and our spells. We've got our phase step with winter or autumn, plus Beguiling Twist as a fun option that we can potentially use. In terms of our tactics, they haven't changed. We're going to use Hunter's Mark and then chuck a bunch of axes and apply our Dreadful Strikes if we hit. So we still have those 3 hand axe attacks with +9 to hit, doing 2d6 plus 7 slashing damage, and our 1d4 Dreadful Strike psychic damage. So against a target with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we would do 43.6 damage per round. And against an enemy with an armor class of 16 and +6 to their saves, it would be 32.4 damage per round. And since last time, this is an increase of 4 to 5 points, about 13 to 15%. Honestly, not that good in terms of an increase. And in terms of where we are compared to other builds, we are behind a lot of other builds at this point. We are ahead of some of the spellcasters that don't have a lot of their cool stuff yet. But for the most part, we did not really gain a lot in the last 3 levels in terms of our combat ability. Which kind of sucks a little bit. But that said, we have gotten a lot better at doing non-combat things. And honestly, I would probably be going with spike growth or something like that with my concentration instead at this point in the character's progression, although it's a lot more difficult to describe mathematically exactly how that's going to work. All right, at level 10, we are going to continue in Ranger. We are now a 9th level Ranger. This means 3rd level spell slots and spells, which means we get our next Fey Wanderer subclass spell, which is Dispel Magic, great utility spell. We also have our next Primal Awareness spell, which is Speak with Plants, and then we get to learn another Ranger spell here, and I'm going to take Summon Fey. Now, if you know anything about the Fey Wanderer, we are going to get this spell from our subclass later, but I want to have it now, and we'll probably want to start using it over Hunter's Mark at this point. That said, it doesn't actually do more damage than Hunter's Mark by a significant amount at this point, so you might want to save your 3rd level slots for something else. But honestly, it just depends on your situation. At level 11, we are going to be a 10th level Ranger. This means we get our next Deft Explorer feature, which is called Tireless. So as an action, we can give ourselves 1d8 plus our Wisdom modifier temporary hit points, up to a number of times per long rest equal to our proficiency bonus. And then whenever we take a short rest, we reduce our exhaustion level by 1. And then we also get Nature's Veil. So this is also proficiency bonus uses per long rest. And what this does is, as a bonus action, we can become invisible until the start of our next turn. There's basically no other requirement on this, and this is a Tasha's feature. Honestly, this one is really good. What you can potentially do with this is, if you make yourself invisible first with your bonus action, this invisibility isn't broken by attacks, so you can use this to give yourself advantage and that kind of thing, or get out of harm's way and that kind of thing. So overall, very powerful and very good utility feature that I would honestly be using as a 10th level Ranger. I think it's very good. At level 12, we are going to be a Ranger 11, and this means that we get our next Ranger subclass feature. And this is actually the main thing that I've been kind of building around and going for on this character, which is the Fey Reinforcements feature. So we learn the Summon Fey spell, and we can cast it without its expensive material component. So because we learn the spell from our subclass and it's always prepared and doesn't count against our number of prepared spells, I would retrain the one that we already had for another spell like Plant Growth, because we're getting it from our subclass. So we also get 1 free cast of Summon Fey per long rest. And when we cast Summon Fey, whether it's the free one or otherwise, we can choose to make it not require concentration. But if you do, it reduces the duration from 1 minute to 1 hour. I mean, from 1 hour to 1 minute. Now, interestingly, this means that you can have multiple summon phase up at the same time, and you can have multiple ones that don't require concentration up at the same time. So you might see where I'm going with this, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The damage of our Dreadful Strikes also bumps up from a D4 to a D6 here. We get another 3rd level spell slot, and we get to learn another spell. I would probably learn Revivify on my character if we didn't already have someone in the party that was doing that, as it's a great spell to have around in case somebody does die. All right. At level 13, our last level before our next damage report, I'm going to take another level in Fighter. And this gives us Action Surge. Once per short or long rest, we can just get an extra action on our turn. Now, this is one of those things that works in the 2014 version of the rules that will not work in the 2024 version of the rules, because the 2024 version of Action Surge from Fighter, you're not allowed to cast spells with it. So what I'm planning on doing with this is getting out 2 summon phase in the first round, concentration free immediately. So that aspect of this build won't work. You're playing with the 2024 rules, but otherwise you can kind of copy the concept. And I just wanted to say that even though the player's handbook isn't out when I'm going to be releasing this video, if you are wanting to make a character like this once those rules come out, that is something that's important to know. All right, but at level 13, it is time for our next damage report. So what has changed since last time? Well, it is a lot in the last 4 levels, and our tactics are probably going to have transitioned pretty wildly from level 10 to level 13. So we have 3rd level spells in slots. We have Summon Fey. We have Fey Reinforcement, so we can cast it concentration free. The damage of our Dreadful Strikes is bumped up by 1 point on average, and we have Action Surge to get an extra action. Also gain some additional utility and control options, such as combining plant and spike growth. This is actually a really powerful control combo. And we also have Nature's Veil to make ourselves invisible if we want. So here are our tactics now. So in the first round, we're going to cast Summon Fey at level 3, concentration free. And then we're going to Action Surge and cast Summon Fey again at level 3, concentration free. So I'm going to use the Angry version of Summon Fey, which it can teleport and give itself advantage on its first weapon attack each turn. I think it's Mirthful or something like that, but whatever it is, it's the angry one. Then in the first round, we're going to use our bonus action as needed. I would probably just go invisible at this point. And then in round 2, we're going to cast Hunter's Mark, so we have our concentration, and then make a couple of attacks. Our Fays are going to go in and attack people. That also happens in round 1. And then in round 3 and beyond, we're just going to attack our target 3 times with our normal hand axe stuff. So I normally only give myself a single setup round, and in this case I'm getting 2, but I think it's fair on this build in particular because we have those 2 summon phase up immediately and they get to make attacks, and so the scaling progression of this character would be good. Extra damage from Hunter's Mark is not a huge amount, so if you don't want to cast that and you want to say cast one of your summon phase with concentration, that's totally fine. All right, so at this point we still have our 3 hand axe attacks doing with plus 10 and 2d6 plus 7 damage each. We still have our 1d6 Dreadful Strikes, and now we have 2 summon Fays who are both making have a plus 8 to hit, doing 1d6 plus 6 piercing damage plus another d6 of force damage. So at this point, against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we would be doing 72 damage per round. And against an armor class of 17, we would do 56.4 damage per round. And since last time, this is an increase of 24 to 28 points, or 65 to 74%. Now, while this is a large increase, we were kind of behind at this point. That said, we have now caught up to a lot of other builds, including we have caught the Giant Scoundrel, our Giant Barbarian Scout Rogue. We are pretty close to my Crushing Hooves build from a couple weeks ago. And we are still behind the baseline fighters, and we are behind a lot of the other spellcasters. But that said, we all are also pretty close to my Undead Paladin Warlock. So overall, honestly, this build's damage, while you're not necessarily on the level of a great Weapon Master or a Sharpshooter character, you're not that far behind. Our damage per round against reasonable armor classes that we might see is about 10 points lower-ish. And that's, just throwing hand axes and dual wielding, which honestly is pretty good. Although we do have 2 angry fairies going at it with short swords to help us. So All right, at level 14, with our Fey reinforcements secure, what I'm going to do for the next 4 levels, and the order you take these levels doesn't matter a super huge amount, I'm going to try to boost our caster levels as much as possible. So there's going to be a little bit of interesting multi-classing that you get to do here from level 14 plus. So specifically at level 14, I would take another level in Ranger. This gives us another ability score increase our feat, and I would honestly take Resilient Wisdom on my character and bump it to 17. Having Wisdom saving throw proficiency is really important as you're getting into higher tiers of play. And if you wanted to do more damage, you could just bump your Wisdom by 2 here. But again, this Wisdom save is really valuable to have, and it would be, bad advice, honestly, to not tell you to take Resilient Wisdom on your character. All right, at level 15, we are going to be a 3rd level fighter. I'm bouncing around a little bit, and I'm actually going to take Eldritch Knight as our fighter subclass here. Now, there is a particular reason for this. Because of the way that multiclassing works, this now bumps us to a 7th level caster. So taking a single level fighter here gives us a single level of casting, which means we get a 4th level spell slot. Now, we get the Eldritch Knight spell casting, and this is probably the most important thing here. We get to learn 2 cantrips. Honestly, you can pick whatever you want. Our intelligence is trash, and I would just take utility ones here. You could also potentially take something like Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade if you wanted that melee option, although you can't make extra attacks if you use that cantrip, and you can't throw your offhand, and you can't throw with Booming Blade, so it doesn't really fit with how this character works, although it could be potentially good mechanically. We also get 3 wizard spells. 2 of them have to be from the Abjuration or Evocation schools. So we're going to take Shield and Absorb Elements. If you took Absorb Elements earlier from Ranger, it is on the Ranger spell list. I would retrain it at level 12 and then get it back here. And then let's take Find Familiar for our out of school thing to give us advantage on 1 attack each turn by having an Owl Familiar and having it take the help action. If you need more explanation on that, let me know in the comments, but I've used this on a lot of builds in the past. I think this tech is pretty well known on how it works. So I'm totally okay with using it. I've had great success with this in actual play as well. All right, at level 16, we need to take 2 more levels of another full caster. Now you could take Druid. I was looking pretty heavily at Druid for this character. I think it fits the kind of fantasy and RP very well. But that said, Cleric does too, and Cleric actually works way better than Druid for this character in particular. So I'm going to take Cleric. We get the Cleric spell casting. We get 3 more cantrips. I would take Toll the Dead, Guidance, and Word of Radiance. Because we are now an 8th level caster, that means we get another 4th level spell slot. We can prepare some Cleric spells. I would probably prepare Command and Healing Word, and then probably pick whatever else you want. And then for our Divine Domain, I'm going to take Twilight. Yes, this domain is probably overpowered, but that said, it is really good on this character with our large volume of summons. At 1st level, we get Fairy Fire and Sleep, always prepared. We get bonus proficiencies in heavy armor and martial weapons, which we already had. We get Eyes of Night, so dark vision out to a range of 300 feet, and we can share this dark vision with our allies. And then Vigilant Blessing, probably the best thing of these first level features. We can give ourselves or another creature advantage on initiative checks. If we go first and we can get those summon phase swinging, that will be a great thing for our damage per round early. Now, it's important to note that now that we have 4th level spell slots, we can potentially make summon phase that get 2 attacks per each of their turns, because the number of attacks that a summon phase gets is half the level the spell is cast at, rounded down. Finally, at level 17, we are going to be a 2nd level Cleric. This means we get Channel Divinity once per short or long rest. We get Turn Undead, which also Clerics get, and then we get the Twilight Sanctuary. Yes, this is the overpowered temporary hit point fountain thing that takes an action to activate and then no action after that. And whenever a creature ends their turn in the area, you can choose to give them a number of hit points equal to a d6 roll plus your Cleric level. And we can use this to basically constantly fortify the entire party and our summons. And this is a very powerful feature, although, 5.5 temporary hit points at level 17 isn't that much. We're mainly taking this for the caster levels, and this will increase the durability of ourselves and our little angry fairies. You can also use Harness Divine Power to recover a spent spell slot up to half our proficiency bonus, so that will be a 3rd level slot, which is actually great for this character. We are also up to 5th level spell slots. Due to the nature of multiclassing, we are now a 9th level caster. So, which means a single 5th level spell slot. So, it is time for our final damage report. So what has changed since last time? Well, we have gained 4th and 5th level spell slots by gaining 4 caster levels. We've also gained Find Familiar to get guaranteed advantage on 1 attack, and then we've gotten a whole bunch of really solid defense and utility options, including shield and absorb elements and all the cleric stuff. So, what do our tactics look like now? Well, they're largely the same as they were at level 13, except we're going to be casting our summon phase at level 5 and level 4. Now, casting at level 5 doesn't actually give you an extra attack, but it bumps the damage per attack by 1. Then we're going to do our same thing with our Concentration Hunter's Mark, and we're going to do our same attacks. But remember, we do now have a familiar helping, and mathematically, it's best to assume that's going to be on the Dreadful Strikes attack. So, here are our numbers now. We now have plus 11 to hit with our handaxes, doing the same amount of damage we've done for a long time. Our first attack with those is going to have advantage thanks to the help from our familiar. And then we have 4 attacks with our summon phase. Only the first attack from each summon phase is going to have advantage thanks to their teleport thing and being an angry little fairy with a short sword. So, the difference in damage is the one with plus 8 is the 5th level one, and the one with plus 7 is the 4th level one. So, against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we would do 104.4 damage per round. And against an enemy with an armor class of 18 and plus 8 to their saves, it's 18.2 damage per round. And since last time, this is an increase of 25 to 32 points, or about 45%. Not a super huge increase. Most of this damage increase is because our summon phase now hit harder. Our base damage hasn't really changed. Now, that said, at this point, we have actually caught up to and passed my baseline fighter builds at level 17 that use both Sharpshooter and Great Weapon Master. And that's something that I think is really cool. We are behind a lot of the other characters, including a lot of the dedicated casters. We have also passed the Dreadlord, Paladin, Undead, Warlock. We are well ahead of the Giant Scoundrel, actually, and we are ahead of my build, the last one from a couple weeks ago, the Crushing Hooves Armored Centaur Monk. So overall, the way that this character has transitioned into kind of a caster damage per round summoner, I think it's about, I want to say half of this build's damage is axes, half of this build's damage is angry fairies with swords. Kind of results in a very interesting playstyle, and the fact that this character, we have both the exploration infiltration aspect as well as the social aspect because we're a Fey Wanderer, I think makes it a very effective and compelling package, even though it's not something that's necessarily meta, so to speak, and I think we've made a very effective build. So it's time to summarize. What is the overall score of this character? Now, to get this, I take the damage numbers at all of our damage reports and average them into one number. And for this character, that's a 57.1. Now, this number is lower overall than some of my other martial builds, including the baseline builds. What I consider better than my baseline builds is to have an overall score of 65 or higher. That said, this build, while it's weaker than those at early levels, is better than them at high levels due to the way that Summon Fey is scaling. So again, overall, an effective character, and honestly, this is one where it really gets interesting around level 13 when you have Action Surge and Fey Reinforcements. It's also pretty interesting at level 5 and 6 when you're chucking a whole bunch of axes, but between levels 6 and 10, before you get your first Summon Fey, it is kind of boring. In terms of what you do, you basically will cast a spell and then chuck axes. But honestly, I think this is, except for that little void in the middle from Ranger 6 to Ranger 8, this is a really cool character and really fun. And I think this would be a very fun character to have at pretty much any table. I would happily play this character in a campaign. Now, if I was going to take this particular version of the character to 20, I would probably take another level in Fighter and another couple levels in Cleric. This makes us an 11th level caster, so we get a 6th level slot. So we'd have a Summon Fey that could make 3 attacks per each of its turns. And then I would use these 2 feats that we get to cap my Wisdom score with another half feat and bumping my Wisdom by 2. Now, one of the things I looked at when I was designing this character was a Battle Master version of this build instead of Eldritch Knight. Now, this version is much better early, particularly at that level 9 mark when you are a Fighter 4, Ranger 5. But that said, it is worse late and overall because we delay getting Fey reinforcements until much closer to level 17. And we are not as high level casters, so our summon phase do not hit anywhere near as hard. That said, the Battlemaster version has some pretty interesting synergy if you get the Menacing Strike maneuver to cause fear on your axe throws. You can use that with Beguiling Twist, although that is not really going to happen until character level 11 or so. A big thing on this character is I would really want to get some magic axes that fly back to my hands. Or, maybe you get some like gauntlets where you have chains and you throw your axes like you're in God of War or something like that. Because honestly, if you're going to be using this character without magical hand axes that come back, you're probably going to need at least 15 hand axes to sustain for any reasonable amount of time. And while that is really cool to carry around a whole bunch of, hand axes on yourself, it was going to be a hassle to say, oh, how many hand axes broke this combat from me throwing them? And just having axes that come back would be a big thing on this character and something I would want to work with my DM to have. So another thing I thought was really cool about this character is that I think we've made a rather effective character that is both a dual wielder and a thrower. We're able to leverage multiple fighting styles to apply bonuses to these and just chuck a whole bunch of hand axes. And honestly, even though it's not on the level of our 2014 meta feats, so great weapon master plus polearm master or crossbow expert plus sharpshooter, I think we are still rather effective, and the way that we've scaled our spells makes this character actually able to compete with those in terms of total damage per round. And yeah, we do have that very interesting transition from being a martial to a summoner / support in higher tier. And I think that makes this character interesting and potentially gives you kind of that aspect of your story to lean into. So thanks for watching. This has been the Lumberjack. I hope you enjoyed this build. Yeah, please let me know what you think in the comments and any ideas that you have for other builds that you'd like to see in the future. Now, going forward with the 2024 Player's Handbook coming out in a couple of months, I am very curious to see what my viewers are interested in seeing, whether it's more 2014 builds or making builds for the 2024 content. I'm hoping to have that book as soon as it comes out, but it just depends on when it arrives. So please let me know what you're interested in seeing. And thanks once again for watching. My name is Nathan, and I will see you next time.